I remember the exact moment my world shifted. It wasn't dramatic, no thunderclaps or earth-shattering revelations. It was just me, standing in our small kitchen in Queens, holding a manila envelope that would change everything. But that moment came much later. First, you need to understand how we got there, why a simple piece of mail had the power to turn our family upside down. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Carmen Williams, and I've been perfecting the art of making something from nothing for the past 15 years. I married into the Rodriguez family, a clan of overachievers who measure success in square footage and designer labels. My husband Marcus owns a small auto repair shop, and together we've raised two incredible kids, Isabella, 13, and Diego, 11, on what some might generously call a tight budget. The Rodriguez family reunion was an annual exercise in endurance. Every year, my sister-in-law Victoria opened the doors of her Westchester mansion to the entire extended family. And every year, I walked through those marble-floored hallways feeling like an imposter wearing a Target dress in a world of Nordstrom couture. Victoria and Eduardo's house screamed wealth in that particular way that money talks when it has nothing to prove. The driveway looked like a luxury car dealership. The pool sparkled like something from a resort brochure, and every surface gleamed with the kind of cleanliness that comes from having a cleaning service, not from scrubbing floors at 6 a.m. yourself. I'd learned to navigate these gatherings with careful precision. Smile at the right moments, compliment the right things, and whatever you do, don't let on that you notice the not-so-subtle digs about your children's clothes, your husband's hobby of fixing cars, or your own attempts to stretch a grocery budget that wouldn't cover one of their dinner parties. The whole family was there, Eduardo's tech executive brother with his trust fund wife, Victoria's surgeon sister with her kids who attended schools with waiting lists, and various cousins who seemed to compete over who could casually mention the highest salary or most expensive vacation. In the middle of it all were Isabella and Diego, trying to fit in with cousins who spoke in six-figure vacation plans and five-digit summer camps like they were talking about the weather. Jennifer and Michael, Victoria and Eduardo's children, had perfected the art of kind cruelty. At 17 and 15 respectively, they'd learned to deliver backhanded compliments with all the skill of seasoned diplomats. "Oh, Isabella, that's such a cute outfit. Where did you get it?" Jennifer would ask, her eyes already knowing the answer was somewhere significantly less prestigious than her own wardrobe's origins. The pool party started innocently enough. The kids changed into their swimwear, Isabella in a perfectly functional suit that I'd found on clearance 2 summers ago, Diego in trunks that had seen better days but served their purpose. I watched from the patio as Michael made a show of his new diving gear, complete with professional goggles and swim fins that probably cost more than our family's monthly swimming pool passes to the local recreation center. "Those trunks are so vintage, Diego," Michael called out with a laugh. "I love that retro look." The adults chuckled appreciatively, missing entirely the veiled mockery in the comment. But Isabella caught it. I saw her shoulders tense slightly as she glued herself to her brother's side, ready to deflect any more compliments that might come his way. I sipped Victoria's imported wine. The bottle she made sure to casually mention cost $150, and listened to the conversation flow around achievements and acquisitions. Eduardo discussed his latest property investment with the casual air of someone buying groceries. Victoria planned their upcoming Mediterranean cruise with the kind of detailed enthusiasm usually reserved for discussing life-changing events. "Carmen, how's the shop?" Eduardo asked, turning to me with that particular smile that said he was being polite. "Marcus still fixing those old cars?" I bristled at the casual dismissal of my husband's expertise. Marcus wasn't just fixing old cars. He was a master mechanic who had built a reputation for bringing classic automobiles back to life. His garage was where people brought cars that other mechanics gave up on, where he performed small miracles with worn-out engines and rusted frames. But explaining that would sound defensive. so I just smiled and nodded. "Business is good," I said simply. "Steady customers, you know how it is?" Victoria patted my hand with the kind of sympathy usually reserved for people announcing minor tragedies. "Well, it's wonderful that Marcus has found his calling. Not everyone can be in business for themselves." The implication hung heavy, that being in business for himself was some kind of consolation prize rather than an achievement. As the afternoon progressed, the conversation naturally turned to children and their futures. This was always the part of family gatherings that made my stomach knot. Jennifer was planning to attend an Ivy League college, already accepted early decision, naturally, while Michael had been accepted into an exclusive coding camp that cost more than our family's annual entertainment budget. "We've already set aside funds for both kids' graduate school," Eduardo mentioned casually while cutting into his overpriced steak. "It's never too early to invest in their futures." The nods around the table were enthusiastic. Everyone had similar stories: college funds that had been growing since birth, high-end tutoring services, and summer programs that promised to give their children every possible advantage. "Isabella's doing so well in school," I said, trying to join the conversation. "Her teachers say she has real potential in mathematics." "That's wonderful," Victoria said, with what I'd learned to recognize as her being gracious to the less fortunate voice. "Have you looked into any summer enrichment programs? Jennifer attended this amazing STEM camp last year. It was quite pricey, but so worth it." The word pricey hung in the air like a gentle warning. I knew without asking that whatever camp Jennifer had attended cost more than we could afford. "We're exploring options," I said non-committally, which was true if you counted exploring the free programs at the local library. Isabella, wise beyond her 13 years, quietly ate her dinner while listening to Jennifer describe her upcoming European tour with an educational travel group. "It's supposed to be life-changing," Jennifer gushed. "We're going to 7 countries in 3 weeks. The focus is on cultural immersion and personal growth." "That sounds incredible," Isabella said politely. I recognized the careful flatness in her voice, the way she'd learned to show interest without revealing any hint of envy or disappointment. She'd gotten good at that. Diego, still young enough to be more direct, asked innocently, "How much does something like that cost?" An uncomfortable pause settled over the table. Eduardo cleared his throat and gave that laugh adults use when children ask questions that highlight awkward truths. "Well, it's an investment, buddy. Good experiences are worth the price." Michael, perhaps sensing an opportunity to establish himself as more sophisticated than his younger cousin, added, "Yeah, some things are just expensive. Like my gaming setup. It cost more than most people's cars." He laughed as if this were an incredible joke rather than a casual display of wealth. I watched my children process this information. Isabella's face remained carefully neutral, but I caught the way her hand moved unconsciously to touch her secondhand phone, still functioning perfectly well, but several generations behind her cousin's latest models. Diego nodded seriously, filing this away with all the other evidence of their cousin's different world. The conversation continued its predictable circuit through accomplishments and acquisitions. Every family member seemed to have a story of recent success, promotions, bonuses, new purchases. When it came my turn to share, I mentioned that Isabella had made honor roll and Diego had joined the school's engineering club. "That's so nice," Victoria said with genuine warmth. "It's important to encourage their interests, especially when they're finding their own way." Again, that subtle implication that our children were somehow disadvantaged, making their own way because their parents couldn't provide the guidance and resources that proper parents should. After dinner, the children gravitated toward different activities. Jennifer and Michael showed off their latest gadgets, tablets, gaming systems, and phones that seemed to have features I didn't even know were possible. Isabella and Diego watched politely as their cousins demonstrated apps and games that required subscriptions and in-app purchases they took for granted. "You guys should download this," Michael said, showing Diego his phone. "It's only like $20 a month, but it's so worth it. $20 a month for a mobile game." I did quick math in my head. That was our family's monthly budget for all entertainment combined. Diego's face revealed nothing, but I knew he was doing his own calculations, wondering how something so casual for Michael could be so significant. For him. I found myself in the kitchen with Victoria, helping clear dishes while the rest of the family relaxed in the living room. The kitchen was stunning. Granite countertops, professional-grade appliances, and gadgets I couldn't identify, but assumed performed specialized cooking tasks I'd never encountered. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "The children seem to be getting along well," Victoria said, loading the dishwasher with practiced efficiency. "Yes, they're good kids," I agreed, watching through the window as Isabella patiently helped Diego understand one of Michael's complicated games. Victoria paused in her dish loading, and I sensed something coming. She turned to me with that particular expression that preceded conversations about difficult topics. "Carmen, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but if you ever need anything for the children, clothes, school supplies, anything, please don't hesitate to ask. We have so much, and children grow so fast." The offer was made with genuine kindness, which somehow made it worse. I appreciated her thoughtfulness, even as it highlighted exactly what she thought of our situation. We were the poor relations, deserving of hand-me-downs and charity, even if it was wrapped in family generosity. "That's very kind of you," I said carefully. "Isabella and Diego are doing fine, but I'll keep that in mind." Victoria nodded with satisfaction, clearly pleased with herself for making such a generous offer. She probably went to bed that night feeling good about her compassion toward her less fortunate sister-in-law. The evening wound down with the children, swimming one last time while the adults lingered over coffee and dessert. I watched my kids in the pool, noting how they seemed smaller somehow in this vast space, their voices echoing in the cavernous pool area, while their cousins' louder, more confident presence seemed to fill every corner. Jennifer was describing her new car, a graduation gift her parents had surprised her with early. "I mean, I didn't expect anything fancy," she said with mock modesty, "but they got me this amazing BMW. It's not the newest model, but it's only 2 years old." Not the newest model, only 2 years old. A car that probably cost more than Marcus made in a good year, described as if it were some kind of consolation prize. Isabella nodded appreciatively, but I saw her glance toward our 10-year-old minivan parked between the BMWs and Audis in the driveway. As we gathered our things to leave, the goodbyes began. Hugs, kisses, promises to stay in touch until the next reunion. Jennifer hugged Isabella with what seemed like genuine affection. "Next time you come, we should plan something fun. Just us girls," she said brightly. "I know some great places to shop where you can find cute things that aren't too expensive." I felt my breath catch. The casual assumption that price was the primary concern when Isabella went shopping. The implication that she needed to find places that accommodated her limited budget. Isabella handled it with her usual grace, thanking Jennifer for the suggestion. Michael, not to be outdone in generosity, offered to let Diego borrow some games. "I have tons I don't play anymore," he said. "You could keep them for a while." Again, the kindness was real, but so was the underlying assumption that Diego couldn't afford his own. In the car ride home, Isabella stared out the window while Diego chattered about the pool and the games. I waited for them to say something about the comparisons, the subtle digs, the casual displays of wealth that had characterized the entire day. But they said nothing, and somehow their silence was more heartbreaking than any complaints would have been. Marcus, his jaw tight with the tension he'd held all day, finally spoke. Next year, maybe we could skip it. But we both knew we wouldn't. These gatherings were family obligations, and despite everything, we loved these people. The fact that they made us feel small wasn't necessarily intentional. They existed in a world where their normal was our extravagant, where their casual spending was our careful saving. That night, after the children were asleep, I found myself thinking about all the moments from the day. The pool party, the dinner conversations, the casual mentions of expenses that represented months of our budget, the well-meaning offers of help, the assumption that we were constantly struggling, barely getting by, deserving of pity and charity. I thought about Isabella's carefully controlled expressions, her practiced politeness in the face of condescension. I thought about Diego's innocent questions that revealed the very gaps our family had learned to navigate quietly. I thought about Marcus's tense smile and my own exhausting performance of being fine with everything. What bothered me most wasn't the money. We were genuinely fine. We had enough. Our children were happy, healthy, and thriving. We lived within our means and took pride in what we'd built together. But the constant comparison, the persistent, underlying message that our enough wasn't really enough, that our contentment was really just making the best of a bad situation, that wore on me. I didn't know, sitting in our modest but comfortable living room at 1 a.m., that in a few months, everything would change. I had no idea that a manila envelope would arrive in our mailbox, containing information that would shift the entire dynamic between us and the Rodriguez family. I couldn't foresee the apologies that would come, the sudden change in tone, the awkward acknowledgement that their assumptions had been wrong. All I knew that night was that I was tired. Tired of smiling through subtle insults. Tired of watching my children navigate relationships with family members who loved them but looked down on them. Tired of being treated as if our happiness was somehow less real because it wasn't built on the same financial foundation as theirs. I fell asleep wondering if this was just how things would always be. If Isabella and Diego would grow up believing that their worth was somehow diminished by our family's modest means, if they would internalize the message that success was measured in dollar signs and square footage. But the universe, as it turns out, had a different plan. The manila envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, 3 months after that uncomfortable family reunion. I was rushing to get the kids out the door for school when I noticed it wedged between the usual stack of bills and grocery store flyers. The return address read IRS in official block letters, and my stomach immediately dropped. Tax season was never stress-free for us, but an unexpected communication from the IRS felt ominous. I tucked it into my purse, deciding to deal with it after work. The morning rush took over. Isabella couldn't find her science homework, Diego spilled orange juice on his backpack, and Marcus was already at the shop dealing with a customer's emergency. By the time I got to my job at the county clerk's office, I'd almost forgotten about the envelope. During my lunch break, I finally opened it. Inside was a letter explaining that there had been an error in the calculation of our earned income tax credit from 3 years prior. The IRS had been conducting automatic reviews and discovered they had underpaid us significantly. Not only were we receiving the back payment with interest, but it appeared we'd also been entitled to a larger credit than we'd claimed. I had to read the number 3 times. $47,000. The check was for $47,000. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at this piece of paper that was going to change everything for us. $47,000. It wasn't lottery money, but for our family, it was transformative. We could pay off Marcus's shop equipment, loan, replace our aging minivan, and still have enough left to do something special for Isabella and Diego. The first call I made was to Marcus. "Honey, are you sitting down?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. When I explained about the letter, he was quiet for a long moment before letting out a whistle of disbelief. "Are you sure this is real? This isn't some kind of scam?" I assured him I'd already called the number on the letter, and verified its authenticity with 3 different IRS representatives. It was real. We really were receiving this unexpected windfall, money that we'd apparently been entitled to all along but had never claimed due to our own modest interpretation of the tax code. That evening, we had a family meeting. Isabella and Diego sat on the couch while Marcus and I explained our good fortune. We told them we'd received an unexpected tax refund, though we didn't mention the exact amount. We wanted to talk about what this might mean for our family. "Does this mean we're rich now?" Diego asked with 11-year-old directness. Marcus laughed gently. "No, buddy. It means we have some extra money to help make things easier and maybe do some special things together." Isabella, always more perceptive, asked quietly, "Is this enough to change things? Like, with the family?" I knew exactly what she meant. Would this money somehow alter how the Rodriguez family saw us? Would $47,000 be enough to buy us respect? Or would it simply be seen as a temporary windfall that didn't change our essential status as the struggling branch of the family tree? "This doesn't change who we are," I told her, carefully. "But it might give us some more options." Over the next few weeks, we made practical decisions with the money. We paid off the loan on Marcus's shop equipment, which had been hanging over us for 2 years. We replaced our faithful but increasingly unreliable minivan with a 3-year-old Honda Pilot. Not luxury by any means, but reliable, safer, and with enough space for our family's needs. The biggest change came in our ability to say yes to opportunities we'd previously had to decline. When Isabella mentioned an educational summer program in marine biology, something she'd been passionate about since discovering Jacques Cousteau documentaries at the library, we could actually consider it. When Diego expressed interest in a robotics camp, we didn't have to immediately start calculating whether we could make it work somehow. We weren't flashy about any of it. Our house was still the same comfortable but modest place in Queens. I still worked at the county clerk's office. Marcus still ran his shop. We made conservative financial decisions, saving most of the money while using some to improve our quality of life in meaningful but understated ways. The summer programs, however, were not understated at all. Isabella's marine biology program was a month-long residential program at a marine research station. Diego's robotics camp was equally impressive, featuring cutting-edge equipment and instruction from MIT graduate students. These weren't the expensive programs that Jennifer and Michael attended, but they were substantial educational investments that we'd never been able to consider before. When the next Rodriguez family gathering rolled around, Victoria's birthday party in July, we arrived with a quiet confidence that felt new. Isabella wore a new dress, nothing fancy but something that made her feel good about herself. Diego carried a new backpack, small gestures that somehow made us all stand a little taller. The first thing Jennifer noticed was our car. "Is that new?" she asked, looking at the Honda Pilot with surprise. "Newer," I said casually. We decided it was time for something more reliable. The party proceeded much like always at first. The same comparisons, the same subtle hierarchies, but something felt different. When Jennifer started talking about her summer travels, Isabella listened with genuine interest, but also shared stories about her marine biology program. When Michael demonstrated his latest expensive tech gadget, Diego enthusiastically described the robots he'd been building. It wasn't a competition. Our children weren't trying to match their cousins dollar for dollar. But they were no longer sitting silently on the sidelines, absorbing stories of opportunities that seemed completely out of reach. Eduardo, mixing drinks by the pool, casually asked Marcus about the shop. "Business seems to be picking up," he observed, noting the new car. Marcus nodded. "Can't complain. Some unexpected good fortune helped us make some improvements." Victoria, overhearing, joined the conversation. "That's wonderful. You both work so hard. You deserve some good luck." The word deserve hung in the air differently than it had at previous gatherings. It wasn't pity anymore, but something closer to recognition. The real moment of change came during dinner. The conversation turned, as it always did, to children's futures and opportunities. Jennifer was excitedly discussing her early acceptance to Columbia, while Michael talked about his plans to attend an elite tech summer program the following year. When it was Isabella's turn to share, she described her marine biology program with real enthusiasm. "We actually got to dive with research-grade equipment," she explained. "I'm thinking about majoring in marine environmental science." Victoria's eyebrows rose with genuine interest. "That sounds fascinating. Where did you attend this program?" When Isabella mentioned the research station, Eduardo nearly choked on his wine. I saw the look that passed between him and Victoria, a mix of surprise and something that looked almost like respect. "That's one of the most competitive programs in the country," Victoria said, and for the first time, her voice carried no condescension. Isabella must have really impressed them to be accepted. Diego, not to be outdone, chimed in about his robotics experience. "We're building an autonomous underwater vehicle next year," he said proudly. "It's for ocean cleanup research." Michael, for once, looked genuinely intrigued rather than superior. "That's actually really cool," he said, leaning forward. "Can you show me some pictures?" As Diego pulled out his phone to show photos and videos from camp, I caught Marcus's eye across the table. Something had shifted, but it was subtle, like the change in light when clouds move away from the sun. The evening continued with genuine conversation about education, opportunities, and goals. Our children weren't being patted on the head anymore, or offered hand-me-downs. They were being treated as equals in a discussion about achievement and aspiration. As we were leaving, Victoria pulled me aside. "Carmen, I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I think we've been presumptuous about your family's situation. It's clear that Isabella and Diego have just as many opportunities as our children, and they're making the most of them." Eduardo, joining us at the car, added, "Marcus, I'd like to talk business sometime. We've been looking for a reliable mechanic for our company fleet. Someone with real expertise, not just these chain stores." The apology wasn't dramatic or tearful. There was no admission of years of subtle condescension or acknowledgement of specific slights, but it was real, and it was enough. On the drive home, Isabella asked, "Mom, why do you think things felt different tonight?" I thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes people need to see who you really are before they can appreciate you properly." "But we haven't changed," Diego pointed out with his usual logic. "No," Marcus agreed. "But now we can show them more of who we've always been." The truth was more complicated than that. Yes, we were the same family with the same values and the same love for each other. But the money had given us something beyond financial security. It had given us choices. And those choices allowed our children to pursue opportunities that demonstrated their capabilities to family members who had previously seen only limitations. It wasn't about proving we could match their spending or compete with their lifestyle. It was about removing the barriers that had made us seem somehow less than, even to people who genuinely cared about us. Over the following months, the family dynamics continued to evolve. Jennifer started texting Isabella about college applications and programs she was considering. Michael and Diego began collaborating on a science project that combined their interests in robotics and marine biology. The adults included us more naturally in conversations about investments, home improvements, and future plans. None of this felt like charity anymore. We weren't the struggling relatives who needed help. We were simply family members with different strengths and different priorities. The children adapted to this new dynamic with remarkable grace. Isabella never became obsessed with designer labels or expensive gadgets. Diego didn't suddenly demand all the privileges his cousins enjoyed. They maintained their groundedness, their appreciation for simple pleasures, while also embracing opportunities they'd never had before. One evening, months later, Marcus and I were reviewing our finances. We'd been careful with the windfall, investing most of it while using some to enhance our lives in meaningful ways. We'd taken that family vacation to Costa Rica, not because we felt we had to compete with anyone, but because Diego had become fascinated with tropical ecosystems, and Isabella wanted to see the marine life she'd been studying. "Do you think this changes who we are?" I asked Marcus as we looked over bank statements. He considered the question seriously. "No," he said finally. "I think it lets us be more of who we are. The kids can pursue their interests without us, having to say no immediately. We can choose opportunities instead of just hoping they'll come along." That $47,000 hadn't made us wealthy by Rodriguez family standards, but it had done something more valuable. It had given us the freedom to reveal our true potential, rather than constantly adapting to our limitations. When the next family gathering came around, no one mentioned the car anymore, or made assumptions about what we could or couldn't afford. The children played together as equals, the adults included us as equals, and for the first time in years, I didn't spend the entire visit calculating how to make our reality fit their expectations. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them.